You're listening to the Clean Comedy Podcast with your host, James Creviston.
Hey, everybody, James with the Clean Comedy Podcast. And today I have a new comedian. I kind of just found out about him randomly. And then he also performed at the Comedy Magic Club. Darren Carter happened to be there at the same time. And a couple other people that I know have been doing the Comedy Magic Club. So I've just been keeping an eye on it. And he came up. And what was cool about it is his video wasn't just like straight stand-up comedy. It was like juggling and magic and like just it was a whole show. Like this guy could just be. He should be in Vegas doing his own show, really, because it's pretty amazing to watch. But please welcome the very funny, the very talented David Deeble. Welcome.
Thank you, James. Great to be with you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. So yeah, I saw you because your videos have you juggling stuff and like doing like kind of magic tricks and things. Like that's insane. Like, and you do comedy at the same time. Like I can barely remember my jokes sometimes. I don't know how you do both things at once.
Yeah, well, I started with magic and juggling, and I started performing when I was like 8 years old, doing shows in my parents' garage. Wow. So, that was my entire act for a long time. I've always done comedy, always done talking, but I started doing stand-up much later, and so now I kind of combine the two. Typically, I start with stand-up. I'll be introduced as a comedian. So then it kind of comes as a surprise when I start doing these other things like kicking a billiard ball in the air. I catch it in my eye socket and things like that. So, it's a bit of stand-up, bit of variety, juggling, magic, that sort of thing.
Do you do cruise ships or anything like that? Or you just do regular touring and stuff?
I live in Germany right now. So I do a lot of cruise ships right now. Mostly in Europe, but also everywhere. Caribbean, South Pacific, Alaska. But lately, typically in the summer, I'll be up in Scandinavia, the Mediterranean in the winter, rest of the year. And then there's some English language venues that I perform. I perform in Amsterdam quite a bit and throughout Germany. These are smaller shows, more like comedy clubs.
Now, is that hard? Like living in Germany and trying to do English comedy, is that hard to translate in that part of the world, or is not really?
Well, I only do English language shows. Okay. So, I would never do a show where the audience is expecting the show to be in German. But there are quite a few, there are English language shows. There's a lot of expats, obviously. You get a lot of Germans and they're great audiences, but it would be understood that it's an English language show ahead of time because I'm not a polyglot, I think is the word.
Now, do you ever have problems with like comedy translating now that it's in the over there, or when you come back to America, like things that are popular culture here that maybe haven't reached Europe or you don't understand yet? Does that ever become an issue for you?
Yeah, you just kind of develop an intuition for it. I mean, and most people in Germany, if you start doing jokes, well, it doesn't even have to be current. I mean, if you're doing jokes about men getting pregnant or something, because in Germany, a man can't get pregnant. So right. They don't know what's going on at any given moment in the culture war or anything like that. And so you just kind of know that those jokes aren't going to work in Germany or for Germans unless they have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in Washington or anywhere else at school boards or anything like that. What's that?
In crazy America.
Yeah, in some ways, Germany's kind of crazy too, regarding climate or things like that. But in terms of, like woke ideology, it doesn't have nearly as much traction in Germany as it does in much of the U.S.
Now, so you said you started when you were 8, you started performing and stuff. Where was the first comedy club or comedy venue that you performed at? And what was kind of your home club and how did you get started becoming a professional comedian?
Sure. Well, yeah, like I said, throughout my childhood, when I was in grade school and high school, I would just perform whenever I could. I grew up in Long Beach, California, just outside of Los Angeles. So there was lots of opportunities to meet other performers and, word of mouth comes out about this venue or that venue, that sort of thing. But once I got out of school, I started working at the Magic Castle in Hollywood. and also the Comedy and Magic Club in Hermosa Beach. And I still perform at both of those venues. I was just at the Comedy Magic Club, you pointed out a couple weeks ago. So those are the two big ones. I mean, I'd say my home comedy club is probably the Comedy Magic Club. But the Magic Castle, I'm there a couple times a year. And so those are two venues that I kind of really feel most at home at.
That's awesome. I've never been in the Magic Castle. I heard it's amazing, but I think you have to like be invited or something. You have to know somebody. Like you can't just like go. I think.
Yeah. I'll have to have you come out. I don't have any dates there right now, but it's funny. You know, I get emails from total strangers because I'm not a member,
Right.
but you can also get people in if you're performing there while you're performing there. So I do a week there at a time. So I'll get emails. They publish my name on their website. Who's upcoming performers. So I'll get emails from people saying, you don't know me, but I understand you're at the Magic Castle. We've always wanted to go. And then sometimes, like one time, my wife and I got woken up by a phone call at like 3 a.m. Some guy's just telling me he's tipsy, and he's telling me how funny I was. He saw the show that night, looked me up, got my phone number. And it's weird, it sounds scary, you're getting a call at 3 a.m. from somebody who saw your show. But on the other hand, he had nothing but nice things to say. So
that's pretty awesome. So then I love the Comedy Magic Club. I've seen a couple shows there. That's how I got to meet Tom Pop for the first time after a show one time. I went back and I was like, look, I know that you're going to say no to this, but is there any way you can ask Tom Pop if I could talk to him for like 5 seconds? And they were like, I'll ask for you. And I was like, oh, thank you. And they were like super nice. And then he came out and he talked to me, my wife and I, for like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes because there was another show later and stuff. So it was really cool. And he gave me a lot of advice. And then I saw him again. I ran into him at the Comedy Store and he like remembered me somehow. Like I was like, hi. And he was like, hey, Comedy Magic Store. And I was like, oh my gosh, like how is that possible? I don't think I didn't really leave that big of an impression, but it was great. That's one of my dream clubs to perform at. I want to perform at Comedy Magic.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. I don't really know him, but I mean, you mentioned Darren Carter earlier too, and he's a very nice guy. I don't know if you've had him on the podcast. Have you had him on?
I have, because I've toured with him. I've gone on tour with him. Yeah, so yeah, I know Darren pretty well.
Some of these acts, most of the time you hang out at a comedy club for enough decades, you don't really laugh a whole lot. But I mean, he's like kind of reminds me of Kevin, the late Kevin Meaney. It's one of those acts. It's just so different and so stupid, and it just makes me laugh.
Well, when you're there, I mean, that's probably why he has the name The Party Starter. He just feels like he's there to have fun. Like it's not really. He's not trying, and so, which is hard. Like when I was on the road with him, I was trying, and he's like, you gotta relax a little bit. Like you gotta have fun. Like you're a little tense. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be. He's like, I know, but like, you gotta relax.
Yeah. So. That's something I could work. I mean, I think maybe that should be my new mantra. You gotta be like an airline pilot. I think many comedians have pointed this out. You can't say, well, I hope we take off on time and I hope we can do this. You gotta come out and you can fake it. That's fine, but you can't be sweating up there.
Yeah, that's the truth. Now, you're doing comedy now. Did you start writing jokes to incorporate into your magic act and then slowly move to stand up, or did you really want to do stand up but use magic and like juggling and stuff to get that? Like, how does that all work? Because that's a lot of skills to combine together.
Yeah, I really had to. I developed this condition when I was 22. It's called dystonia. It's a little more common among musicians, but I developed this problem with my right hand where I kind of lost the coordination with it. And I developed this herky-jerky motion when I would juggle. So that's how I kind of started doing these kind of juggling adjacent things. I started doing things that would take my hand out of play. I would juggle ping pong balls with my mouth, or I do this thing where I balance a coat hanger on my face and has a marshmallow on it. I set fire to the marshmallow and all that other stuff. So, and then after 20 years, it only impacted my juggling. And then about 7 years ago, it went up just like overnight, and now it impacts everything. So like I can't write with my right hand. I can't hold a microphone with my right hand or hold a cup of coffee or anything like that. So anyway, to back up, initially, that's why I started coming up with these other skills, but I also started doing stand-up too, which is nice because you start traveling with juggling. I have colleagues who are jugglers, and they're traveling with billiard balls and torches that require gasoline and or tall unicycles, and it's just a pain in the butt. So the stand-up's great. I mean, right now I'm working on kind of outsourcing ideas for jokes online, because that's one thing about Germany. You don't have a lot of open mics, or you can't just go out to the Comedy Magic Club and, try out 5 minutes. So I'm trying this experiment where I use social media to try out new material, try to get feedback from people. But that's the story. It was kind of necessity.
Yeah. Well, I recommend a live show app. It's an app that you can get on your phone. They have open mics that are all via your phone, and you can go on there with other comedians and work out material, and they give you feedback and stuff. They have feedback shows
really?
and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way for them to get your material too.
No. I know everyone says that. Everyone's like, well, they still. I'm like, if you go to open mic, that's also the same concern, and people are going to be more shady at an open mic because you can't identify them, as opposed to who logged on to that show. That's recorded. Yeah. Everyone knows there. So
I'm fortunate in that I think I'm sufficiently, my sense of humor is kind of dry and quirky that I don't think it's the kind, most of my jokes I don't think would work for many other people, but that's interesting. I may check that out.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, if you're writing jokes that are for you, fit your voice and your POV, nobody can take those jokes anyways. If you're writing just generalized jokes, that's why people are like, oh, I don't want someone to steal my Uber joke or my Tinder joke or whatever. It's like, because they don't mean anything. They're just there.
Yeah. I mean, I like jokes. I mean, my wife is German. I have like 7 minutes on being married to a German woman. And yeah, obviously that sort of thing is a good help. Plus, I mean, I've got the attitude now where, I mean, if somebody steals it, they steal it. I can't, what am I going to do? I have to come up with new material anyway. Yeah. So
that's awesome. My family is originally from Germany. Like my Oma is from Karlsruhe, Germany. I've never actually been there. I do want to go and visit sometime. But that's got to be amazing. How big was the culture shock of going from America to Germany? Like how was that?
Well, we've lived here 10 of the last 15 years. We were in California for about the middle 4 or 5 years. It's fine. I mean, it's not like I'm living in Russia or, some second world country, something like that. And in some ways it's better. I mean, there's virtually no crime. They drive great. And I could spend the rest of the podcast talking about what I love about Germany. But there's some maddening things. I mentioned the, overwhelming consensus on issues like climate change, or even, that's just one example. There are little things. I mean, the language is screwy, and I'm not very good. I'm terrible at languages, and I've recently resigned myself. I'm never going to learn this language. I will never, not because I won't try. I'm too old, and my brain is just too set in its ways. For right
is there
now,
anything you miss from America? Like that you go like, oh, I wish I had X, Y, and Z from America.
Well, certain foods. That's the thing when you get to, I think one time I went 9 months without going to the U.S., which is the longest I've ever been outside of the U.S. I landed in Houston airport, and suddenly there's like the most delicious food, like everywhere, every possible kind. And in Germany, you can still eat well, it's fine, but it's not like the U.S. The convenience, there's not there are Sunday laws here in Germany. Everything is basically like Utah, and it's totally closed. Everything's closed on Sundays. So, if it's Saturday night and you don't have any milk and you're exhausted, you still got to go out and get milk if you want to get through the weekend.
Wow.
That's right. And then of course, there's this kind of rule-oriented mentality where everything's got to be done by the book. That's kind of a stereotype, and it's true. Like I'll give you an example. A German told me that if there's a debate about whether you have to do something like wear a mask or something, there's some confusion. The existence of a sign saying you have to wear a mask settles the issue. It's like, oh, well, there's a sign. Whereas in America, it's like, well, I really don't care if there's a sign. I'm not going to wear a mask. How do you like that?
Yeah.
And so I'm much more comfortable with the American. You go into a grocery store, not now, thankfully, but I go in a grocery store without a mask. I just wanted to buy, I think, like milk, just one milk. It was late at night. I think it was exactly what I outlined earlier. Saturday night, the kids need milk in the morning and we don't have any. And I showed up without a mask. And the guy says, you have to wear a mask. And what can I say? It's Germany. I don't have my mask. I'm not buying milk for my family. Okay, now you've got me started. The other thing, one more thing. I'm like, we live in in Germany, unless you're a doctor or very wealthy, you don't live in a freestanding home. It's stairwell living. For example, we live in a 6-family unit. And it's great. It's beautiful. Our neighbors are fantastic. But we share a stairwell and we have a light on that goes off after 5 minutes. It's on a timer. So, I'll be helping my father-in-law down the stairs. He has Parkinson's, and it takes him, 10 minutes with help to get down the stairs. And these are marble, hard stairs. Halfway down, then the lights go out. So what do? Do I say, just hold on to the banister while I walk down to the end and hit the light again? And so things like that are kind of maddening.
That's silly. Now, so you said 9 months is the longest you've been out of the U.S. That's crazy. I've done a military deployment. I was out for about 6.5 months, so I kind of feel that, but not as not as long. And most of my time is spent in the Persian Gulf, so not even the same thing. But
I was going to say 6.5 months is shorter than 9, but you were in a war zone. I was in.
It was still fine. It is what it is. But when you come home or when you come back to America, is there anything that you have to do, have to see as soon as you arrive? Like, I know when I got back, the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to go eat like a big cheeseburger. Cause like everywhere we went, there wasn't any of that stuff. And even on the ship, like in the Navy, sorry, Navy, like they do feed you well, but you're not getting like a good cheeseburger or something like that. Like, what was your thing that you really wanted?
Well, I don't know if there's really one thing. One thing I do look forward to is just having conversations in English, because I have to speak German here, unless it's somebody younger who speaks English. But even then, I can't really speak as I would with you. I can't make the references, use certain words. And so it's, after, you go 3 months without, even with my wife who speaks fluent English, I still have to, choose my words, kind of think about what words I use, because she doesn't know what imprimatur means, things like that. So it is, I think it's not one moment that I look forward to. I just look forward to getting to the US and going to Starbucks at LAX or whatever, and just, having a conversation in English with somebody, or on the plane, and just because it really makes you realize how nice it is just to be able to make a connection with somebody, in a coffee shop or something like that.
That's awesome. And you say that you do a lot of cruise ships. How many months out of the year are you on cruise ships? And with those, do you feel that same way where you can have those conversations and kind of speak English and stuff like that?
Yeah, I didn't count the cruise ships because when I only work on American Cruise Lines. So
okay,
that's an opportunity to speak English to everyone I meet for
right.
a week, which is nice. But it varies. I mean, post-pandemic, I only go out for about a week at a time these days. I think the longest I've gone out is 1 week since the pandemic. I did 3 months one time, like one of my very first cruise ship contracts when I was like 23 or something.
Wow.
But it's fine. I just got an email from my cruise ship agent today is that they've decided to change my category. This harks back to how we started this conversation. I'm I'm no longer a variety act, but I'm a stand-up comedian because
Oh,
they booked me as a variety act or a comedy juggler or comedy magician, something like that. And then they're saying he showed up and he like told jokes for 20 minutes and they were great. But, because on cruise ships, they can't book two comedians on the same ship. They don't want to book two comedy jugglers or two singers because there's overlap. So I guess this is my coming out party as a stand-up comic. I'll still do the comedy juggling at the breaking news here on the Clean Comedy.
that's awesome though. I mean, I want to add stuff into my act too. Like I'm learning to play the ukulele so I can just play songs and do parodies and stuff like that. Because I love like Weird Al and parody music. So I think like that's a good thing to add in there. Plus it brings something new. Like, yeah, I can tell you a joke and I can tell you sing a funny song that's related to that joke or idea or whatever, and then you can laugh.
Yeah.
Like, so I think it's
Absolutely.
one of the best things. Now, if you could go back in time and start your comedy career over, what piece of advice would you give yourself? What would you tell yourself?
Well, I don't want to totally open the kimono, as the kids say. I for about 15 years there, I was drinking too much, like 3 or 4 times a week. A lot of this is on cruise ships because I was 23 years old, and I was a big fish in a small pond. And my parents were both non-drinkers, so I never really learned to drink responsibly. And I was kind of burning the candle at both ends until I got married, when I was 37. So that would be one. I didn't, I was running and taking care of myself in that way, but I'd have to put off my run until late afternoon because I was hungover, things like that. And I was listening to a lot of Dave Attell at the time, and I love Dave Attell because he calls himself an alcoholic, and he kind of embraced that whole lifestyle, and it's very funny. It's funny, in stand-up, but it's not so funny when you're living that life. And my understanding, even Dave Attell has given up drinking, and that's his whole brand. So I went from kind of living this double life to kind of embracing this, work hard, play hard thing, with a lot of emphasis on play hard. So if I could go back, I would say, listen, you're on this treadmill, you're not going anywhere. It's a lot of fun, but you're living in a kind of alcoholic and sexual fog. And what you need to do is keep moving forward, and grow, and you'll be happier that way.
That's awesome. That's great advice for everyone. Like, don't get stuck on the treadmill, like keep moving forward. Cause I think a lot of times a lot of comedians get stuck in the loop of like, well, this is the show I do, this is the thing I do, and I'm just going to keep repeating it. You're not moving anywhere, but it feels, at least it feels to you like something's happening, even though nothing is really happening.
Yeah. It's like you get a buzz on every night. You think, oh, this is so fun. Every night it's different. Something happens. And then every morning you wake up with the same hangover. I'd go to immigration to disembark a cruise ship at 5 a.m. when I went to bed at like 4 a.m. or 4:30. And that's the other thing. I've gotten old. If I drink during the day now, I'm not a total non-drinker, but I can't drink during the day because I can't stay awake. But if I drink at night, I can't fall asleep. So it's like, it's a function of age maybe, but there's no greater hell for me is laying in bed and you can't fall asleep. And if I've had too much to drink, like even if it's say 2 beers, I'm a little guy. If I have like 2 tall beers on an empty stomach, I lay in bed. I don't dream. I just have like a 5-second movie reel that playing over and over.
Oh, wow.
And over. And it's just hell.
Wow. I have that sometimes, but not from drinking. I just have too many ideas in my head that will play over and over and over again until I sit up and write them out or talking to my phone or something. Sometimes my wife will wake up and be like, oh, you have an idea. Okay. And she'll just go back to sleep because she knows what's happening. So that's
sure.
good. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it. This is awesome. Go check out David's stuff. Go check out his website. Go check out his Instagram where he has all these clips of him doing crazy things. The flaming marshmallow thing. Okay, I should ask about that. The flaming marshmallow on the thing. How many times did you have to practice that? And then how do you get to be comfortable enough to go, now I'm going to light this thing on fire that's going to be on my face? I should ask that earlier, but yeah.
Sure. Well, this was at a time when I was desperate to come up with something other than, conventional juggling, because I couldn't do the conventional juggling anymore. So I was collaborating with a friend. I was living in Colorado at the time, and he was a very talented artist and entertainer. So he was a great guy to bounce ideas off. And I always liked the idea of an open flame on stage, but I didn't like doing anything with lighter fluid, which smells, or gasoline. You spill it or it gets on your clothes. So I had seen a friend who folds paper into a cone and balances it on his nose, sets it on fire, and it slowly burns down until it gets very small, and then he kind of blows on it and the ashes spread. It's kind of cool, but it's self-contained, and not messy. So I just thought, set a marshmallow on fire and you put on a coat hanger. I don't remember the details of how one idea led to the next, but yeah, I ended up balancing the coat hanger on my forehead. I got the marshmallow on the hook. Then I set fire to the marshmallow just long enough to let it catch fire, blow it out, and then I let it fall forward into my mouth. I probably, now that I think of it, I never really eat marshmallows in the normal course of an event, but I've probably had 1,000 as a result of doing that bit. But like I said, I like it because fire is kind of primal and it gets the audience looking like, you can hear the audience go, whoa, what's going on here? But at the same time, it's involves no fuel or pyrotechnics or anything like that.
So how many times do you remember like balancing it to like get the marshmallow before you got comfortable like lighting it on fire? Because I think that's like the last piece, right? You've got to like practice getting into your mouth, doing that, moving the right movement, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I always thought the ultimate. See, I blow it out and then let it fall into my mouth. I always thought the ultimate would be to let it fall into my mouth and put it out in my mouth, like
that'd be cool.
What do you call them? Fire eaters.
Yeah.
But I don't know anything about fire eating. I know what the only thing I think I know is that you put it out because you deprive it of air. You hold your breath and it goes out. But I don't want to burn the roof of my mouth, and I've never actually tried it. But one time, it was struggling to burn. I finally got it burning, but it got so black that the skin of the marshmallow slid off.
Oh no!
The body of the marshmallow, and it landed in my eye. I ended up getting this just terrible burn right where my eye meets the bridge of my nose. I looked like I had gotten a fist bite or something. So that took way too long to heal, a couple of weeks before it was totally better. So there have been some snafus, but for the most part, you do thousands of shows, that sort of thing's bound to happen.
That's one of the coolest things. I was just watching it going, wow. My first thought was like, how many times did he have to do this before he's like, all right, now I'm going to light the thing on fire? Like, because I would have been so nervous. Like, it's fine with the marshmallow, whatever, it falls or whatever. But when it's on fire, then you're like, oh no, okay, now it's real, like.
Well, that's the other thing. Sorry to adjust here.
No worries.
In Europe, American, jet puff technology is not available. They don't have standard American marshmallows. You have to buy these European kind. They look just like American marshmallows, but they don't have that resin on them. And I learned on stage that they also don't catch fire. I mean, it's like trying to set fire to a rock or something. It just doesn't burn. So I'm on stage and I was using marshmallows I bought in France. And so I learned the hard way that they don't burn. But now I've got this connection, this guy who's able to get me American marshmallows, and he ships them to me here in Germany. And so the kids are having a blast. I have more marshmallows than possibly use in the show. So we were actually burning some out on the roasting them on the balcony the other day.
That's awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thanks for talking to me about magic and comedy and all those things. I hope when you come to the U.S. next time, you let me know. I will come out and see a show. I would love to see it.
Absolutely will. I would love to. Sorry to interrupt, but it's great to be on your podcast. And since you're an LA person, I would love to meet you.
Yeah, great. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm going to put all the links to David's stuff in the show notes and everything. Really go watch his Instagram, watch some of those videos. You're going to be amazed because I was like blown away. Like, I love this kind of stuff. I love when people add extra things to comedy. So for me, it was like, wow, this is fun to watch. And Have a good one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Go over to YouTube and subscribe. I need more subscribers. We're getting there. We're growing every day. I see more people doing it, but everybody sign up, subscribe. There's more stuff coming. We really appreciate you, and have a good one. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.